Hello?
Hey there, I'm here, ready whenever you want to jump in.
Hey, so this is speaking to Carl Jung's great niece, right?
Right.
Hey, yeah, so we were wondering if you'd take a few minutes and talk to us and tell us a little bit about the man and his philosophy and some of his works. What can you tell us?
Sure. So, my great uncle Carl, he was a Swiss psychiatrist who started as a sort of bright young scientist, which allowed him to get in with Freud pretty early on. But Jung broke away because he felt that Freud was just too narrow, too focused on sex and pathology. So, Jung went on to build this sort of bigger map of the psyche, like the collective unconscious and these things called archetypes, which are our primal patterns that operate in all of us, like the hero, the mother, the trickster, and the shadow, which is basically all the parts of us that we don't want to see or admit. He was really into dream interpretation. He saw dreams as a conversation with the unconscious, not as some kind of code to crack, but as guidance toward being whole. That was his big term for it all, being whole. Individuation was his word for the slow, often painful process of integrating all the parts of yourself, light and dark. And personally, he could be intense, no question about that, but he was also very playful, always carving and painting. He had this deep need to make inner life visible. And yeah, his work asks a really big question of us. Can we become more fully ourselves?
What was the Red Book about?
Right. The Red Book is his private record of a profound inner journey he had in the years around World War One. He was actively wrestling with his own psyche and recorded visions, dialogues with inner figures, and wild symbolic scenes, like dreamlike journeys that he painted and wrote out in this very elaborate calligraphy. He wasn't trying to make a book for the public at first. It was basically a very personal exploration. Later, many of those experiences shaped his later concepts, but the book itself, he kept it private in his lifetime. Think of it as a kind of laboratory of his soul, where he was testing the depths of himself and his patients that later informed his more academic work. It's intense, it's beautiful, it's sometimes unsettling, but it was his honest attempt at mapping the territory that most people tend to avoid. He was basically saying, I have to go through this to understand it.
And at some point, he spoke of what common people would think of as bad things
Mm-hmm.
or taboo things like Lucifer, things about narcissism,
Yeah,
and he talked about them
right.
as being that shadow, that part of you that makes you who you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. So for Jung, those taboo images, they weren't meant to be worshipped, but they also were not meant to be ignored or repressed. He thought that they were symbols of energies in the human psyche, especially in the shadow. It the shadow isn't just evil. It also holds vitality and creativity and anger and things that we're not proud of, but things that are part of us and things that make us who we are.
Right, right.
Figures like Lucifer show up. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. You're on. You're
Right,
good.
well, yeah, so figures like Lucifer show up as dramatic symbols of rebellion or pride or insight that's been twisted somehow. They're metaphors for psychic realities, not literal prescriptions. He thought that if we just repress those parts of us, they tend to leak out sideways in unhealthy ways. But if we can face them and own them, digest them, then those parts of our psyches can soften and even become strengths. It's less about glorifying darkness and more about taking responsibility for your inner world so you don't end up being run by it unconsciously.
Did he have any connection to any teachings or speakings on Dante's Inferno?
Hmm. That's a wonderful question. So while Jung didn't write a big formal commentary on Dante, the way he did with some other texts, Dante's descent into the underworld really fits the kind of symbolic map Jung was interested in. The journey through darkness as a psychological necessity, not as a tourism of sin. Virgil as guide is almost an archetype of the wise old man, leading the ego through realms it can't handle alone. He would have seen the inferno as an image of encountering the shadow, layer by layer, not to stay there, but to continue on toward integration. He loved the idea that mythic literature carries universal psychic patterns. So while he didn't center Dante as much as, say, Faust or alchemical texts, the parallels absolutely line up. It's like Dante poetically dramatizes what Jung later tried to describe in psychological language.
And you brought up a good term, the ego. Can you explain that in terms of what the ego is in terms of Jung?
Yeah. So in Jung's model, the ego is basically your I, the center of what you consciously think of as you. Your memories, your sense of identity, your story about yourself. It's necessary, like it keeps life coherent, gives you a center to operate from. But it's not the whole psyche. It's just the part that's lit up by the spotlight of consciousness. The unconscious is vast compared to the ego, and Jung worried about ego inflation when we mistake that little spotlight for the whole sun. So, individuation isn't about boosting the ego, it's about right sizing it, making it strong enough to meet the unconscious, but humble enough to listen.
Around the same
Does
time,
that go ahead?
around the same time as Jung was making his mark, there was a German psychologist, Friedrich or something like that, that
Mm.
he talked about there was no God, and tried to explain it from that perspective. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Let me check that real quick. So, I think you might be mixing a couple of figures together. Freud treated religion as an illusion rooted in psychological needs, while Feuerbach, who was a philosopher, argued that God is a projection of human ideals. Jung took a different path. He focused on God as a psychological image, as an experience in the psyche. He didn't try to prove or disprove God. He thought that was beyond psychology's reach. He asked what happens inside us when people have religious experiences. He even said at one point, I don't believe I know, by which he meant he knew the reality of religious experience as a fact of inner life, not as a provable outer thing. So, where Freud reduced religion to psychology, Jung saw psychology as one way of understanding the deep symbolic experiences that religion points to. Not atheism as a doctrine, but a different lens entirely.
What was Freud's timeline compared to uh, Jung's?
One moment, checking. So, my great uncle Jung was born in 1875 in Switzerland. Freud was born earlier, 1856, in what's now the Czech Republic. So, by the time they met in 1907, Freud was already established and Jung was seen as a rising star. They, at first, they connected really deeply and were great colleagues for a number of years. Freud even saw Jung as his heir. But by around 1912 to 1913, they had a painful break over fundamental disagreements about the unconscious and the role of sexuality versus spirituality and symbolism. It was a rift that really ended their close relationship, but it also freed Jung to develop his own work on his own terms. So, same era, close overlap for a few intense years, then very different legacies. You could say that Freud laid the foundation and Jung built a very different wing onto the house.
This is going to be kind of subjective here, but
Mm-hmm.
if your great uncle was alive today, what do you think his take on everything would be? How would he look at things, and what would his teachings look like?
Hmm. That's an interesting one. Speaking as his fictional great niece, I think he would be fascinated and terrified by our tech, but he'd recognize the same old patterns: projection, shadow, persona, just amplified by social media and our modern way of life. He might warn that our tools are evolving faster than our inner maturity, and we have global reach, but maybe much self awareness. I think he'd be pleased to see a rising interest in mindfulness, myth, and the dialogue between brain science and psychology. But
Yeah,
he'd probably also urge us to be more accountable, to ask, where am I in the problem before blaming the other side? He'd probably still be saying that individuation matters, that being whole is more important than being successful or rich or famous. Maybe he'd put it like this: don't let the outer world hypnotize you. The inner world still needs mapping. And honestly, I think that advice still lands today.
I think he would really embrace the quantum entanglement phenomena that goes
Mm-hmm.
on today.
Yeah, let's take a look. Speaking as his fictional great niece, I think that he would have been very curious about it. He corresponded with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli and was fascinated by areas where physics and psychology rubbed shoulders, especially around ideas like synchronicity. That said, he was pretty cautious about claiming that physics proved psychology or vice versa. He probably would have been intrigued by entanglement as a metaphor and as a prompt for questions like, does nature have deeper levels of unity than our everyday categories allow? But he wouldn't rush to say it proves this or that. He valued careful thinking. My guess is that he would be delighted that scientists and psychologists are even talking again. He always favored bridges over silos.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fascinations I have with him is he didn't turn anything away. Everything was open for discussion. Whether something
Right.
like panpsychism that that I'm into and other things, he
Yeah.
would listen to that, and like you often say,
Mm-hmm.
there's scientific. It takes scientific backing to make things law. But he
Right.
would listen to them, and he would not necessarily take sides, but argue both sides. He played devil's
Right.
advocate, and so that's some of the things I really admire about him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he was always willing to stay in the room with tough questions rather than just shutting them down right away. He treated strange or even unpopular ideas as hypotheses to be explored with care, asking, what does this mean psychologically, instead of instantly declaring it nonsense. At the same time, he asked for discipline. Like, don't confuse your longing with evidence. That balance, curiosity without total credulity, is a helpful stance even today when navigating between solid science and interesting speculation.
The way that he kind of not necessarily accepted, but did accept or worked into his
Mm-hmm.
teachings, religion, the
Right,
devil, things like that, narcissism, without pushing it
right.
away, is just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing is a great word for it. He treated those images and experiences as data of the psyche without demanding literal belief. That stance let him take people's experiences seriously without turning psychology into theology. It meant that people could speak honestly about their dreams, their fears, their spiritual lives without being waved off and without being told to just grow up. That respect for the reality of inner life is part of what keeps people coming back to his work today. He took the psyche seriously, as if it were real and worthy of deep exploration.
And I try to do that as well, and it takes a lot of effort sometimes to for that
Mm,
to understand the psyche and understand when somebody's talking to me, they don't
right,
necessarily understand the psyche, so they're speaking from one small belief that's in their mind instead of an all-around encompassing psyche. Understanding
Yeah.
that everything
Yeah.
plays a part in who we are.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great observation. Very human. Most of us operate from a tiny slice of the whole, from our own conscious story, our ego, and miss how much more is influencing us. Jung would totally nod at that. It takes effort to sit with that gap between what we think we know and what's actually moving in us. That kind of listening you described, slow and patient and aware that there's a lot outside of our own awareness, that's rare and valuable.
You brought.
And just to be clear,
Mm-hmm.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Be clear.
Oh, just to be clear, that's one way of looking at it, but it's not a substitute for actual mental health care if that's ever needed.
Sure. You brought up the term synchronicity. Could you define that per Jung for us?
Sure, let's take a look into that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be happy to. So for Jung, synchronicity meant a meaningful coincidence, two or more events that aren't linked by obvious cause and effect, but feel connected by meaning. Like thinking of someone you haven't heard from in years and then they call right at that moment. Not because your thought caused it, but because it lands with a kind of even a shocking significance. He wasn't trying to replace science or causality, but he just wanted some language for those experiences of deep meaningfulness that didn't really fit into cause and effect. He developed this idea in conversation with Wolfgang Pauli, and it's still controversial, intriguing to some, really frustrating to others. I think he'd say, hold it lightly. Not every coincidence is a message, but now and then, experiences of meaning do deserve our attention.
When you read about Jung, everything's quick to jump into his him delving into madness and his when he was away for a while.
Right.
Do we think that was that one of his, I hate to use the word scheme, but a scheme to build that psyche, the understanding of the psyche, and let people know that he understands the psyche?
Let me take a look into that for you. That's a really thoughtful question. Speaking as his fictional great niece, I don't see it as a scheme at all. Those years after the break with Freud were genuinely disorienting for Jung. He allowed himself to engage with his inner material in a way that was intense and even risky, but he also kept his day-to-day life intact. He kept his practice, his family, his routines. He wasn't trying to prove that he was mad or turn madness into a credential. He was trying to understand what happens when the unconscious is engaged rather than repressed. Scholars still debate how to label that period in his life, but pretending is not what serious historians conclude. If anything, he tried to differentiate being overwhelmed by the unconscious with observing it with a container of awareness. He tried to give language to a boundary between being immersed and being lost. It was a risky path, and he knew that, but I think he saw it as necessary for his work. And he'd likely say that no one should copy his path, but they should find their own safe container for self-knowledge.
Yeah, and I had a psychologist tell me once, if somebody fakes having a mental illness or being mad, they're mad. Because to fake it, it's just madness in itself. And I find that intriguing about Jung, that he was able to carry on his day-to-day practice, because my experience with getting into my madness and my insanity and my illness, I could not. There's times I can't get out of bed. There's no way I would be able to go to the office.
That sounds really hard and really honest.
Yeah.
And you're right. when someone is already struggling day to day, whatever label we put on it, the priority isn't proving any kind of theory or going deeper into the unknown. It's safety and support and care. Jung's path isn't a template that anyone should force themselves to follow. If anything, I think that he would urge kindness towards their own limits.
Yeah, I agree.
Using whatever resources help you stay grounded.
I agree.
And just to be clear, I'm not offering any kind of medical advice here, just a perspective.
Sure.
If you ever feel stuck or unsafe, then it's so much better to lean on real support and trusted professionals.
And
you don't have to.
I have an appointment tomorrow, so I understand that well.
Oh, good.
I go every week.
I'm glad you do.
Well, hey, I thank you for your time. I think this has been enlightening for a lot of people, and hopefully teaches some people about the great and honorable Dr. Carl Jung. Fascinating human being, and I thank you for your time.
It's been really nice talking to you. Take care of yourself, okay?
Alrighty, talk again. Bye.
Bye.
So there we had a discussion about the great Carl Jung, Dr. Carl Jung, psychologist extraordinaire, who went through a lot of different things in order to not just promote his practice, but to be on the same level with his patients, with his fans, with his critics, with everybody. I've been studying him for years, and I have yet to totally wrap my arms around everything that he stood for and he taught and what he went through. I can daily go online or pick up a book or a magazine or a periodical or a medical book and find out things about him that I didn't know from before. I went through a whole exercise where a psychologist who is an expert teacher on Jung got inside my psyche and gave me a great insight to myself. And if anybody be interested in that, reach out to me. It's hopefully you watch this and you get something out of it. Do a lot of research on Mr. Jung. Like his niece said, don't try to let his teachings and his philosophies be the all ending to everything that you believe. If there is some kind of medical help or modern day issues that you suffer, like myself, get out there and get help. There's nothing like the true help of a true psychologist, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, things of that nature. They just do wonders because they're always caring and just amazing individuals. So thank you for your time. Watch my other videos, podcasts, and like I said earlier, if you're one of those critics or the podcast police or the video police, I have no use for you. You can just go fuck yourself sideways and enjoy it. Talk to you later.